Hi everybody, this is Nick Bosco from MMA Latest News. We're going to be bringing to you a new web series called 5 Fights to Watch Outside the UFC. We're going to be bringing this to you every month. So this month we're starting with October, the 5 fights outside the UFC that you cannot miss for the month of October. Let's start off with number 5. We're going to go to regional MMA in the New York, New Jersey area with Cage Fury Fighting Championships. On October 21st, CFFC is heading back to the Borgata in New Jersey, Atlantic City, to bring you CFFC 68. Now, featured on that fight is an interim bantamweight championship title fight between Ricky Bandejas and Jarrell Hodge. Ricky Bandejas is 8-1. He's won 3 fights in a row and is now fighting for the interim bantamweight title. He's an up-and-coming star in the New Jersey area. He fights out of Catone MMA, which houses some of the best in the UFC, including Frankie Edgar, Edson Barboza, and Corey Anderson. Bandejas has been fighting in the CFFC for a while now and is working his way up to a title fight. You might have heard of CFFC on Dana White's Looking for a Fight. He went to 2 shows and actually signed a couple guys, including Jared Gordon, who is now fighting in the UFC. Also, on the Dana White Contender Series, there was a couple fighters out of the CFFC, and many have thought of this organization as a feeding grounds for the UFC, and Ricky Bandejas could be next. His opponent, Jarrell Hodge, is 5-1. He's been fighting for a couple years now. Just recently went pro in the last year and a half. In his amateur career, he has an amazing knockout win over current UFC bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt. He knocked him out cold. This guy has striking power and could be making a name for himself soon in the UFC if he can defeat Bandejas at CFFC. Moving ahead to number 4, we have Mackenzie Dern versus Mandy Polk at LFA 24. LFA 24 takes place on October 13th in Phoenix, Arizona. Mackenzie Dern, who is most known for her jiu-jitsu skills, she is the #1 ranked female black belt jiu-jitsu in the world. She is recently just coming off of a loss at ADCC, the Jiu-Jitsu World Championships. She was the reigning champion, reigning gold medalist, and she recently just lost in the first day. So she is now focusing all her attention to MMA. She is currently 3-0 in MMA, although she has missed weight in the last 2 of her fights when she was fighting at 115. This fight, she moves up to 125 to make her flyweight debut. And she is up against Mandy Polk, who is a former fitness competitor and turned MMA fighter. She is 3-3, and she's coming off of a loss herself. So Mackenzie Dern, a lot of people had their sights set on her, that she could be coming into the UFC sometime soon. With the UFC just creating the new UFC women's flyweight division and the tough series that's going on right now, the champion will be crowned, and we could be seeing Mackenzie Dern in the UFC if she can string together 1 or 2 more wins.
And now moving on to number 3.
Paddy the Baddy Pimblett is returning to Cage Warriors. He is coming off of a loss when he lost his featherweight belt in his last fight. Paddy Pimblett, like I said, is coming off of the loss, losing the belt. He's on a mission to work his way back up. He's quite the character. He is amazing on the mic. He's a crowd favorite, and he is looking to make his run to the UFC or Bellator. His opponent, Sikic, is 10-0 with 1 draw. In his last 10 fights, he has numerous amounts of TKOs. This guy can strike with the best of them. He tried out for The Ultimate Fighter season 22, but unfortunately was injured in his fight to get into the house. He dislocated his shoulder, so he did not make it onto the house. You could be seeing him in the UFC pretty soon, especially if he gets a win over the very well-known Pimblett. And now to number 2. We make our way to Bellator with a women's flyweight fight between Christina Williams and Heather Hardy. Heather Hardy jumped into the MMA scene headfirst. She's been known for her boxing skills for many years, a world champion boxer, now making her way to MMA in Bellator. She made her debut at Bellator 180 in New York City. She's a New York native. She is quite the character, another fan favorite, and a lot of people want to see her fight. So she'll be making her second appearance in the Bellator cage against Christina Williams. Bellator will be crowning their first women's flyweight champion in November, and Heather Hardy could be in contention with another win. If she strings together a couple more wins in Bellator, you could possibly see her fighting for that title. Christina Williams is making her professional debut. She is 3-0 as an amateur, and this will be her first fight as a professional and her first fight in the Bellator ring. Her amateur record is 2 decisions with 1 submission. She's very good on the ground, so it'll be nice to see a submission artist fighting against a professional boxer. This is one fight you will not want to miss. And that brings us to the #1 fight to watch outside the UFC in the month of October. And that brings us to none other than Gegard Mousasi's Bellator debut. I think everybody who's a fan of the sport has been looking forward to this guy making his Bellator debut ever since he decided to leave the UFC. I think his decision to leave the UFC caught many people by surprise because he was coming off of massive wins over top guys such as Chris Weidman, and he could have been 1 fight away from the title shot. This was before we knew for sure if Bisping was going to fight GSP, or if he was going to fight Yoel Romero, or if he was going to fight Robert Whittaker. I think that if Gegard would have stayed a little bit longer, he would have been in that interim title fight and could have possibly solidified a fight with Michael Bisping or GSP, depending on who wins that fight. But he decided to take his talents to Bellator, and now he is going to be probably, if he wins this fight, 1 fight away from the title fight. He's fighting Alexander Shlemenko. Shlemenko had an interesting Bellator career so far. He is the former middleweight champion. Then he ran into some trouble with a failed drug test and a suspension, and then the suspension was lifted, so he was able to fight 6 months later. He's currently won 5 fights in a row in the Bellator cage and in M1 kickboxing out of Russia. So this guy knows how to strike, knows how to stand, and could take on Gegard headfirst. Although his last 4 fights in the Bellator cage was 1 win, 1 no contest when he tested positive for the steroids, and 2 losses. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of Shlemenko we see coming into this fight with Mousasi. Thanks guys for tuning in. We're going to be doing this every month. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of this. Once again, I'm Nick Bosco, and you're watching MMA Latest News. Thanks so much.